Yeah. All right, Shalom. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Bragatham to the brothers. Yahweh Shamar Alathan Ba'Shem Yahushai to the sisters. I'm Priest and Officer Shagapan of the I.S.U.P.K. Started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General YAHANNA. And every day since we've been on these streets since 1969, we have been teaching so-called blacks, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native Americans that and sisters to each other, that we are the real people of the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. We into the Bible, right? And today is Tuesday, and what we're going to go into some scriptures that we went over already, some new scriptures that will help emphasize the point of brotherhood and how we would always fight for each other, come to each other's aid, be there to help each other in our needs and rescue each other, because it will all end up leading to this book called Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage by a devil, William Lauren Katz, right? And in this book, this devil documents pretty well of how the relationship between natives and the so-called Africans, which we know as the Negroes, right? And their relationship when they came to the Americas, right? So first, we're going to get in. First, I just want to make sure that everything is working online. Let me check the YouTube real quick. All right. I'm not sure there's any questions or anything like that. All right, just checking the Facebook. All right, let's get into it. So we got that first scripture ready? All right, let's go ahead. Read, brother.
The book of Genesis, chapter 14, verse 12.
Stop. And just to give you a little recap, right here, heathen nations, heathen tribes have been going to war for each other. And right now they are about to take Abraham's nephew, Lot. All right, keep going.
Verse 12. And they took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed.
So here we learn that Abraham's brother's son, his nephew, Lot, who went his own way, so that way Abraham and Lot's farmers and helpers and workers, there wouldn't be any beef, right? So they went to their own land. Right now, Lot has been captured, him, his family, his house, all his goods have been captured and taken. Keep going.
Verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew.
So someone from Lot's camp, someone from Lot's house, someone that works for Lot was able to escape this ordeal and ran to the only place he knew that can help Lot and the rest of the people, which was Abraham. This man ran to Abraham and told Abraham of everything that had happened. Keep going.
For he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abraham.
So Abraham lived in a land where the people around him, they were in agreement. They were, you know, they agreed with Abraham. They were on good terms with Abraham. Keep going.
Verse 14. And when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive.
Read that again.
And when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive.
Abraham and Lot come from the same family. They're brothers. Read it again.
And when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive.
And when Abraham heard that his brother, his nephew Lot, was taken captive, was captured by heathens, right? Had everything stolen from him. Keep going.
He armed his trained servants.
He did what?
He armed his trained servants.
All of his trained servants, all the men that worked for Abraham, that were trained at war, Abraham gave them weapons. Keep going.
Born in his own house, 318.
And altogether there were 318 men that have been born under Abraham's house, that have been born and worked for Abraham's family. All men trained in war. Abraham gave them all weapons and gathered a small army to go rescue his brother, his nephew, Lot. Keep going.
And pursued them unto Dan.
And went after the heathens that captured his brother's family, his servants, his household, all his goods and cattle. Keep going.
Verse 15. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them.
They did what?
And smote them.
So Abraham came up with a plan to have him and his servants attack these heathens that captured his brother, his nephew. And they did what?
And smote them.
And they killed them. Abraham was on a mission to go rescue his brother. Abraham was on a mission to go rescue his nephew. Abraham was on a mission to go rescue his family. Keep going.
And pursued them unto Hobah.
And they chased them down all the way to where?
To Hobah.
Keep going.
Which is on the left hand of Damascus.
Abraham did not stop. He kept pursuing these heathens until he was able to rescue his brother, his nephew, Lot. Keep going.
Verse 16. And he brought back all the goods.
What did Abraham do?
And he brought back all the goods.
Everything that was taken from Lot, Abraham went and did what?
Brought back all the goods.
He got everything back for Lot. Keep going.
And also brought again his brother Lot.
And what?
And also brought again his brother Lot.
And most importantly, Abraham rescued his brother, Lot. Abraham rescued his nephew, Lot. Abraham's sole mission was to go rescue his family, his flesh and his blood, his bone. Keep going.
And his goods. And the woman also.
And who else?
And the woman also.
Abraham went and rescued everyone that was with Lot. Everyone that was a servant of Lot. Everything that belonged to Lot, Abraham went and rescued and regained and redelivered back onto Lot. Keep going.
And the people. Verse 17. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Shedorlamer and of
Yeah, actually, you can stop right there, right? So this is the point. We have a spirit that dwells in us that just naturally wants to go rescue each other, naturally wants to go help each other. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we are brothers and sisters to each other. It is our duty to stand and fight for one another. It is our duty to protect one another. It is inherited in our spirit, in our bones, in our flesh. When we see each other suffering, we go and try to rescue them. That's why you always see blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans always together. That's why you see us as always the best fighters, the best athletes, the best runners, the best football players, basketball players, boxers, jiu-jitsu experts, capoeira, masters. We all have a spirit of war in us that we utilize to go help one another, that we utilize to rescue one another, that we utilize to go to our brother's aid when he is in need. Abraham knew what the mission was. He did not just say, okay, well, that's just Lot's misfortune. He didn't say, well, Lot should have never fought with me and never went his own way. We could have been living together. This would have never happened if Lot would have just stayed with me. No, Abraham was concerned about his brother. And without any questions asked, without any doubt in his mind, he went to go rescue his brother. He went to go rescue his nephew Lot. And here in the I.S.U.P.K, we all have that spirit built into us. Every single trooper, officer, captain, and general. We all have this spirit, this order, this natural instinct to go out there and rescue our brothers. Because that's what Christ did. That's what Moses did. That's what all the prophets before us did. And we have that same spirit to want and go and rescue our people, to fight for our people, to get with the Lord on our side, to seek vengeance for our people. Let's drop that, right? And we're going to go, I believe it's Genesis 19. Actually, no, Genesis chapter 34. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 34. And we're going to start in verse 1, right? Because this is another example of how we are so obsessed about making sure our people are safe and taken care of, and seeking punishment against those that want to harm us. We naturally have a spirit to want to rescue and save and support and run to the aid of our brothers, to our sisters. Keep going.
The book of Genesis chapter 34 verse 1. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land.
So now we're reading about Jacob having a daughter named Dinah, right? So if Jacob had a daughter named Dinah, that would also mean that Dinah had 12 brothers. You got Judah, Levi, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Reuben, Gad, Ephraim, Zebulun, Simeon, Issachar, Asher, Manasseh. You got all these brothers that Dinah has. She got 12 brothers, right? Keep going.
Verse 2. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite,
basically a Hamite, a disgusting African, a heathen, keep going,
prince of the country, saw her, he took her.
He did what?
He took her.
He took her. Keep going.
And lay with her.
And did what?
And lay with her.
He took her and he raped her. Keep going.
And defiled her.
And what?
And defiled her.
He disgraced her. He raped the daughter of Jacob. He raped the sister of the 12 tribes of Israel. This disgusting African, this filthy, diabolical Hamite, this heathen had the nerve to lift a finger against the children of Israel and rape the daughter of Israel, rape the sister of the 12 tribes of Israel. Keep going.
And his soul clave unto Dinah.
And his what?
And his soul clave unto Dinah.
And he was in love. After he raped her, he fell in love. Keep going.
The daughter of Jacob. And he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel.
So after he rapes her, took her purity by force, Now he wants to be nice to her. Now he wants to whisper sweet nothings and sing disgusting Akon songs into her ear and tell her that she's the only one for him and blah, 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 blah. After he raped her, after he defiled Dinah. Keep going.
Verse 4. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me this damsel to wife.
And listen, he ended up speaking to his father, and he wanted his father to help him get Dinah to be his wife. So after you rape the woman, now you want this woman to be your wife. You couldn't do it the correct way first. You couldn't just go ask the woman's father for her hand in marriage, right? You had to rape her first. You had to take her by force. You had to defile her and then ask your father to help you get her to be your wife. Keep going.
Verse 5. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter.
Now the father, Jacob, found out that his daughter Dinah was raped, was defiled, was taken by force. Keep going.
Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come.
Now imagine your daughter being raped. Imagine your daughter being defiled by a disgusting man, in this case a disgusting African, and having to hold your peace, having to hold your composure, and wait until the rest of your family comes home so that way you can break the news to them that not only that your daughter, their sister, was raped, defiled, but now the same rapist, this sexual predator, wants to marry your daughter, wants to marry their sister who he just finished raping. Keep going.
Verse 6. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him.
Now the father of this African son who raped our daughter, our sister, went to go speak to Jacob. Keep going.
Verse 7. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it.
And as soon as the 12 brothers, the 12 sons of Israel, heard what had happened, they came out of the field. They stopped doing their work. They stopped tending to the sheep and cattle and harvesting corn and grain. They stopped all that once they found out that their sister was raped. Once they found out that their sister was defiled. Once they found out that the man who raped their sister had the audacity to come and seek their father out so that way he could marry the daughter that he just raped. So he can marry their sister who he just raped. Keep going.
And the men were grieved.
The what?
And the men were grieved.
The men were disappointed, grieved, heartbroken, upset. There was an outcry finding out that their sister was raped by a disgusting African, by a heathen. And then finding out that the same man who raped their sister, who defiled their sister, wants to marry their sister after he had already raped her. After he had already kidnapped her, brought her to wherever he brought her where no one could help her. No one could hear her scream for help, and raped her. Now he wants to marry her. Keep going.
And they were very wroth.
And they were what?
Very wroth.
They were pissed. They were angry. They were infuriated. They were furious. They were livid. Keep going.
Because he had wrought folly in Israel in line with Jacob's daughter.
Because he brought sin. He committed a crime by thinking that he can sleep with Jacob's daughter, by actually raping Jacob's daughter, by thinking he could even be allowed to marry the daughter of Israel. The audacity that this African had to think that he could lay a finger on one of the children of God, on the daughter of God. If us black and Hispanic men are princes of God, then that means every black, Hispanic, and Native American woman and girl and daughter are princesses of God. And this African had the audacity to think that he could rape a princess of God and then think that he can go to the father and ask for her hand in marriage. after he already committed a crime, after he already did a great wrongdoing. Keep going.
Which thing ought not to be done.
And this would never to be happen. No heathen was to ever marry a daughter of Israel. No heathen was ever to even think about committing a crime against the children of Israel. How dare he think that he could rape the daughter of Israel? Keep going.
Verse 8. And Hammer communed with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter.
And this African father is telling everyone, listen, my son, he loves your daughter. He loves your sister. He longs after her after he raped her. After he caught her out on the street, dragged her into the alley and raped her. Forced himself onto her. Ripped her clothes off, pulled her pants down, and raped her against her will. No one around to help her. No one around to hear her screams for help and her cries. He raped her. He had no remorse for raping her. And now, keep going.
I pray you give him to wife.
And now he's praying, he's begging, he's asking Israel to give his daughter who was just raped to his son who raped her. Keep going.
Verse 9. And make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you.
And this African wanted to create a bond. He wanted to have Dinah marry his son who just finished raping her. He wanted all the daughters of Israel to be able to marry all the sons of this disgusting African. He wanted the sons of Israel to marry the disgusting, ugly women of these African people. Keep going.
Verse 10. And ye shall dwell with us.
And what?
And ye shall dwell with us.
And he wanted Israel to live with them. Keep going.
And the land shall be before you.
And be able to live on the land and prosper on the land with these Africans. Keep going.
Dwell and trade ye therein.
And be able to conduct business. Keep going.
And get you possessions therein.
And own things. This African wanted to build a relationship and bond with Jacob and his 12 sons and his families and his servants. Keep going.
Verse 11. And Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren.
And Shechem, the disgusting African who raped the daughter of Jacob, who raped the daughter of the 12 sons of Israel, said what?
Let me find grace in your eyes.
Let me find grace in your eyes. Think of me kindly. Dig deep into your heart, into your soul, and accept me and love me and allow me to marry your sister after I raped her. Be kind unto me and accept me as a brother after I raped your sister, after I raped your daughter. Keep going.
And what ye shall say unto me, I will give.
And whatever you ask, I will give you. You guys want horses? I'll give you horses. You want cattle? I'll give you cattle. You want sheep? I'll give you sheep. You want gold and silver? I'll give you all of that. Just be kind. Find favor with me. I love your daughter. I love your sister, even though I raped her. Let me marry your daughter. Let me marry your sister after I had already raped her. Keep going.
Verse 12. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as ye shall say unto me.
Whatever amount you want, I will give whatever you ask of me. Keep going.
But give me the damsel to wife.
But give me your sister to be my wife, who I have already raped.
So
yes?
So
yes?
saying this to Jacob.
Yes.
To the father, sorry.
Shechem is speaking to Jacob and to the 12 brothers.
Right.
Yes. So he sees this African is telling them, I'll give you anything. Just let me have your daughter to be my wife. Let me have your sister to be my wife. Although I already raped her. although I had already defiled her. Keep going.
Verse 13. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor, his father, deceitfully, and said, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister.
So the 12 sons, the 12 brothers, decided to deal with these Africans very deceitfully. Now, I'm not saying what they're doing is right, because we're supposed to honor all men. We're supposed to deal straight with each other. But what I want us to understand is how much these brothers were so upset about the atrocity that had just happened to their sister, who they loved and adorned and cared for and cherished. Is the same way almost every Black, Hispanic, and Native American man feels about their mother, their sister, their daughter. They cherish them. They love them. They hold them so dear. And to find out that they have been raped, to imagine finding out your mother was raped. Imagine finding out your sister was raped. Imagine finding out that your own baby girl, your own little princess, your daughter was raped. And the same person that raped her is now in your face asking you to allow them to marry your mom, to marry your daughter, to marry your sister. The audacity that man has to have to be in your face smiling and begging to let them love the person that they raped, your mother, your sister, your daughter. Keep going.
Verse 14. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised.
So they were plotting to get revenge. Now, I'm not saying that this is correct, because revenge is of the Lord. But these brothers, they could not let this fly. They had to protect their sister. They had to seek some type of justice for their sister. And the point I'm trying to make is that we have a spirit to help our people. Black, Hispanic, and Native American people have a naturally ordained spirit to rescue each other, to fight for each other, to help each other in times of need, to rescue each other, to save each other, to fight for one another. Keep going. The end of 14.
For that were a reproach unto us.
So they're saying that they can't allow this Hamite, this disgusting African, this heathen, to marry their sister since he's uncircumcised. Because for us, it was a law that on the 8th day of every male born to Israel, on the 8th day, that son had to be circumcised. Keep going.
Verse 15. But in this will we consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised.
And so they told this African, listen, if we're going to join hand in hand with you, if you're going to be amongst us, if you're going to live how we live, if we're going to be one big happy family, then you have to do the things that we do. And that entails that all the men of your people have to be circumcised. Because all of our men are circumcised. Keep going.
Verse 16. Then will we give our daughters unto you.
Then will we be able to let you and your men marry our daughters. We'll let you Africans marry our beautiful daughters of Israel. Keep going.
And we will take your daughters to us.
And we will allow our strong Israelite men, us Black, Hispanic, and Native American men, we'll be allowed to marry your daughters. If you make sure that your men, you African men, were circumcised. Keep going.
And we will dwell with you. And we will become one people.
And then we can all just live together and be one happy family. Keep going.
Verse 17. But if you will not hearken unto us.
But if you don't listen to us, keep going.
To be circumcised.
And you don't get circumcised.
Then will we take our daughter and we will be gone.
Then we'll take our sister, our daughter Dinah, away from you and we'll just leave if you don't want to agree to this one thing. All you have to do is agree to this one thing, that your men be circumcised. And you can marry our sister Dinah. You can marry our daughter Dinah. Your men can marry the rest of our daughters. Our men can marry your daughters. But if you don't do it, if you don't want to get circumcised, then we have no business, we have no further business with each other. Keep going.
Verse 18. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son.
So the African father Hamor and his son Shechem, who raped Dinah, they were happy by this. They were happy that they found a way to be able to join Israel and these Africans together. Keep going.
Verse 19. And the young man deferred not to do the thing.
They wasted no time at all. Keep going.
Because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father.
And Shechem was excited to do this because he loved Dinah after he raped her. He was so much in love and obsessed with Dinah after he raped her. And he felt that he was most honored. He was so prideful, being from the being from the house of Hamor, the best son of Hamor, that he was able to marry the daughter of Jacob, to marry Dinah, this beautiful black Hispanic Native American woman. Keep going.
Verse 20. And Hamor and Shechem his son came unto the gate of their city, and communed with the men of their city, saying,
and they all went back home to speak to the rest of the Africans, to let them know what the news was. Keep going.
Verse 21. These men are peaceable with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land, and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Verse 22.
So all this was going on, and they say, listen, we reached an agreement. All these great things are now going to happen. We're going to let them do business with us. We can marry their daughters. Their sons can marry our daughters. It's going to be great for us. Keep going.
Verse 22. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us be circumcised, as they are circumcised.
So all we got to do is have all our men be circumcised, because all of the men of Israel are circumcised. Keep going.
Verse 23. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast...
So like you can stop it there. Let's skip down to 24.
Verse 24. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of his city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city.
So every African man that was in the city became circumcised. Now I don't know about you, but having any part of your body removed is very painful. These are grown men that are now cutting their foreskin off of their rod. That's very painful, very irritating. It hurts, extremely uncomfortable. Can make you not be able to function properly because of how much pain you're in. Keep going.
Verse 25. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore.
When they were what?
When they were sore.
They were in pain. Keep going.
That two of the sons of Jacob.
The two of the sons of Jacob. Two of the brothers of Dinah. Keep going.
Simeon and Levi.
The Dominicans and the Haitians.
Dinah's brethren took each man his sword, and came upon the city boldly, and slew all the men.
And they went into the city while these Africans were sore and in pain for being circumcised, and they killed all the men. They killed all the men, Simeon and Levi. The Dominicans and the Haitians came together, joined hand in hand to get vengeance for their sister Dinah, who was viciously raped by an African. They killed all the African men. They killed all those heathens. because that one African had the audacity to rape their daughters, to rape their sisters, to touch a female from the nation of Israel. How dare you think you have the right, the ability to rape a black, Hispanic, or Native American woman and think that nothing bad would happen to you? Don't you know that black, Hispanic, and Native American women have brothers? They have brothers and uncles and male cousins that would kill you if they found out you raped their daughter, raped their sister, raped their aunt, raped their mothers, raped their nieces. Listen, we got prisons all around this country in America filled with black and Hispanic men and Native American men, some of them who have murdered someone for raping and killing their mother, their daughter, their sister, their aunts, their nieces. And you have the audacity to think that nothing bad was going to happen to you, that it would just be all good and gravy, that it'll be Gucci for you to just rape their sister, rape their daughter, and then ask for her hand in marriage. Keep going.
Verse 26. And they slew Hamor and Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword.
And they killed Shechem, that African man who raped their sister. They also killed Shechem's father, Hamor, the one who had the audacity to go and speak to Jacob and his sons and ask that his son Shechem be allowed to marry his daughter, their sister Dinah. Keep going.
And took Dinah out of Shechem's house.
And they rescued their sister out of this African's house. Keep going.
And went out. 27. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister.
And then the rest of the sons of Jacob, the rest of the brothers, came to the city where all the men were slain, and they took everything. As you continue to read, they took the sheep, the ox, the asses, right? They took everything that was in the field. They took all the wealth. They took all the children to be servants. They took the wives to be captives, right? They took everything. Because this one disgusting African, this heathen, thought that he could get away with raping a black, Hispanic, or Native American woman. He thought nothing bad could happen after he raped a black, Hispanic, or Native American woman. But listen, black, Hispanic, and Native American women, they have brothers. They have sisters. They have uncles and fathers and male cousins. And Lord have mercy to anyone who thinks that they will come and try to rape a daughter of Commanding General YAHANNA.
Right.
Mercy be with the brothers that go and seek vengeance. Lord be with the brothers that get an order to go rescue a daughter of Commanding General YAHANNA. Lord be with that person who thought that it would be okay to rape a black, Hispanic, or Native American woman. For all you heathens out there, for all you white men, African men, Asian men, Arab men, East Indian men, be mindful. You better think more than 3 times before you think you should lay a finger on a black, Hispanic, or Native American woman. Because that woman has brothers and uncles and male cousins and fathers that will find you. And Lord be with you. All right? Let's drop that. And let's go to the book of Joshua, chapter 1. Let me just check the chat real quick.
Chapter 1, sir.
Yeah, we're going to start on chapter 1. I'm just checking the chat real quick. Okay, well, Facebook looks good. YouTube looks good. Terrence Bernie, Shalom Shabbatam, what's going on, brother? Rakapath, Yashikar, Shalom, sis, Yahweh Shemar Tam Bashim Yashai. All right. So far, there's no questions right now. We're okay. All right, so we're going to start chapter 1, verse. Start at verse 10, right? Because prior to this, we have already captured land for Israel on the west side of the river Jordan, right? And this was supposed to be for Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, right? Now we're about to cross over to the east side of the river Jordan. Okay? Read starting in verse 10.
The book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 10. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, verse 11, pass through the host and command the people, saying, prepare you victuals, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan to go into possess the land which the Lord your power giveth you to possess it.
So right now we're preparing to cross the Jordan River to the east side of the Jordan River. Right? Keep going.
Verse 12. And to the Reubenites.
The who?
To the Reubenites.
The Reubenites are the so-called Seminole Indians that lived in the southern part of North America, from Florida to Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Missouri, right? Alabama, even the southern part of the United States. Keep going.
And to the Gadites.
The who?
And to the Gadites.
The Gadites is the rest of the North American Indians. The Blackfoot, the Cherokee, those from the Cree Nation, right? The Apache, the Iroquois, right? The Hopi Indians. These are the rest. These are the Gadites, according to the Bible. Keep going.
And to half the tribe of Manasseh.
What?
And to half the tribe of Manasseh.
These are the so-called Cubans, right? The other Taino Indians that lived with the so-called Puerto Ricans and the rest of the Arawak Indians that lived in the Caribbean, right? Keep going.
Spake Joshua, saying, verse 13, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you.
And Joshua is telling them, he's telling these Seminole Indians, the Reubens, he's telling the North American Indians, the Gadites, he's telling the Cubans, the Manasseh, to remember what Moses commanded you. Remember what the servant of God said to you, said for you to remember, to keep, commanded you. Keep going.
Saying, the Lord your God hath given you rest and hath given you this land.
Look, you guys have this whole land. You guys have this whole land to raise up families and homes and cities and villages to be prosperous. Keep going.
Verse 14, your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side Jordan.
All your children, your wives, right? They're going to stay on this side of the river Jordan. Keep going.
But ye shall pass before your brethren armed.
But you better put your swords on, your spears, your shields, your armor, get your horses ready for war. You're going to pass with your brethren. You're going to come with your brothers, the Asherites, the Ephraimites, the Judites, the Benjamites. You're going to come with them, and you should be ready for war. Be war ready, prepared for battle. Keep going.
All the mighty men of the Lord, and help them.
And you're going to help your brothers get their land, get their inheritance, seek their rest, get their own peace, be able to help them secure land for their little ones and their wives, to build tents and cities and homes for them. You're going to help your brothers. Remember, you are commanded, you promised. You are to fulfill this order to help your brothers. Keep going.
Verse 15. Until the Lord have given your brethren rest.
And you're going to fight with your brothers. Help your brothers get what belongs to them, as promised by the Lord, until the Lord has allowed them to get what's theirs. You're going to keep fighting. You're going to help your brothers. You're going to fight right alongside your brothers. You Native Americans are going to fight with the so-called blacks. You Seminole Indians are going to fight right alongside the Puerto Ricans and the Haitians and the Dominicans. You're going to fight right along the Guatemalans and the Brazilians and the Mexicans. You're going to fight side by side with people from Argentina and Chile and Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua. You're going to fight right alongside the Colombians and the Venezuelans. You're going to help your brothers be able to find land for themselves, to find rest for their sons and daughters and wives. This is your duty. Don't you ever forget what you promised to Moses. Don't you ever forget what Moses commanded you to do. Keep going.
As he hath given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Most High your power giveth them. Then ye shall return unto the land of your possession and enjoy it.
And once you help your brothers be free, once you help your brothers get their own land, once you help your brothers have a safe land, safety and security for their children, their wives, then you can go back to your children. Then you can go back to your wives. But only once your brothers have secured land for themselves and their families. Once you have fulfilled your bargain to help your part of the bargain to help your brothers. This is what we naturally do. Black, Hispanic, and Native American people coming together, fighting for each other. And in a few moments, that's what we're going to get into. And Black Indians and Hidden Heritage. For those Native Americans and Seminole Indians that had that spirit of remembrance to remember to help their brothers, we're going to see how they help their brothers when white people, when slave masters brought over blacks from Africa. We're going to see what the Reubenites and the Gadites, who remembered that they were the same people as the so-called Negroes, who remembered their brothers, who looked at the people who were being enslaved by white people as their brothers. There was something deep down in their spirit that reminded them that we must help them. Keep going.
Which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on this side Jordan toward the sun rising. Verse 16. And they answered Joshua, saying,
and the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half of Manasseh answered Joshua, saying what?
All that thou commandest us, we will do.
So the Native Americans said what?
All that thou hast commanded us, we will do.
The Seminole Indians said what to Joshua?
All that thou commanded us, we will do.
The Cubans said what to Joshua?
All that thou commandest us, we will do.
These Native Americans, these Seminole Indians, they told Joshua, what you have told us to do, we're going to do. We're going to help our brothers. We're going to fight for and with our brothers. We're going to help our brothers destroy the heathens from the land that are promised to us. Keep going.
And whithersoever thou sendest us, we will go.
All right, stop there, right? Because now it's going to segue. It's going to segue into this book right here. Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage by a white man named William Loren Katz, who did a pretty good job in documenting a lot of the interactions between Native Americans and the so-called Negroes, right? Now, just the premise, right? Just like we read in the Bible, we had some of our own people that betrayed us. We had some of our own people that caused us to die. We had some of our own people who would rather join the heathens, who would rather do business with white people and Africans, and betrayed blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So be mindful that as you read this book, Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage, be mindful that you will find some Native Americans. Salakia, 1 second. Yes, sir. I was just letting you know the condition of the weather. Right now, it's raining, but it's Tawab right now, in my opinion, sir. Concert. Shalom on Christ. So, yo, what's up? Go check the weather outside, Babu Bishan. And let me know if it's raining really hard. I want to make sure everyone here in class gets home safe tonight. All right. Salakia, brothers and sisters online, give us a few moments, right? You know, we're here live in New York City right now. And right now there's a nor'easter passing over New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, New England. And it's causing great problems in terms of transportation. So we want to make sure everyone that's in class will be able to leave class safely and return home to their children and to their wives. We good? Oh, gosh. Most High in Christ. Right? So keep in mind that in this book, we will read about some Native Americans who fought against other Native Americans, who sided with white people, with the British, the English, the French, the Spanish, right? And they fought against other Native Americans who wanted to rescue and fight for their black brothers and sisters, right? So with that said, we're going to read some of these instances where the Native Americans, the Gadites, the Seminole Indians, the Reubenites, went and they rescued and fought side by side with the so-called Negroes, right? We're going to start on page 30. Right on page 30, it says, for Europeans seeking a source of labor that could not escape, Africans, they're referring to the so-called Negroes as Africans here, were ideal because they were 3,000 miles from home. Now keep in mind that the so-called that the Africans and the British, the Spanish, right? They're all working together, hunting down the Negroes on the west coast of Africa, selling them to the white man and bringing them over to North, South, Central, and Caribbean America to work as slaves. And here it's saying that that a good source of labor were these Negroes who were 3,000 miles away from where they were living. Basically, they're being shipped 3,000 miles to a strange land that they've never been to, and there's nowhere for them to run. There's nowhere for these Negroes to run. There's nowhere for the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi to run to, right? Because they were 3,000 miles from home. They could not flee to loved ones. They could not escape to go back to the safety of their loved ones, of their fathers, their sons, their daughters, and mothers, their villages, their people. As Indian slaves could, because here in the Americas, Indians knew the land, knew where they were at, could flee and run to safety and return back to their villages, their settlements, their people. African men and women, Negro men and women, who fled could always be identified by skin color, and black became the badge of bondage, right? So it's saying here that it was easy to pinpoint, identify who the slaves were, because the Negroes that were brought over were darker, much darker than the Indians, according to them. It says here, next, the two peoples, talking about the Native Americans and the Negroes, began to discover they shared some vital views of life. So the Native Americans who were slaves and ran away for safety, the so-called Negroes who were slaves and those that ran away, they discovered by communicating with each other, by living amongst each other, by suffering together, by fleeing together, by seeking refuge and safety with one another, that they shared some vital views of life. Family was of basic importance to both. Family was highly important to both these Negroes and these Native Americans. With children and the elderly treasured, they both treasured the children, loved the children. They both treasured the elderly, took care of their old. Religion was a daily part of cultural life, not merely practiced on Sundays. Our religious beliefs were a part of our lives on a daily basis. We had to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments every single day. We had to keep these high holy days every single day during the month and every year that they came across. On November 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, is the Feast of Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, where we were able to save our people, defeat the disgusting Greeks,
right,
Romans, and whatever other heathens, and redecorate the temple of worship. Right? Our religious beliefs, our customs were part of our cultural life. Both Africans, the Negroes, and Native Americans found they shared a belief in economic cooperation rather than competition and rivalry. Because we know that we can do better together. We know that we can succeed together. We know that we would fall apart and be conquered if we stood divided. Each people was proud, but neither was weighed down by prejudice. Skill, friendship, and trust. I repeat, skill, friendship, and trust, not skin color or race, were important. Now remember, this is a devil writing this. This is a white man writing this. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans come in all different types and shades of brown. There were dark-skinned Native Americans, just like there were dark-skinned Negroes. There were light-skinned Native Americans, just like there were light-skinned Negroes. There were, quote-unquote, red-skinned Native Americans, just like there were, quote-unquote, red-skinned Negroes. We were all the same people. We looked alike. We had very similar features, very similar skin tones and complexions. Since Indians willingly adopted people into their villages, Africans, the Negroes, found they were welcome. The so-called Negroes were welcome amongst Native Americans. They were escaping white slave masters. They were welcome amongst the Native Americans. They wanted to seek freedom. They were welcome amongst the Native Americans. Right? Let's go on to page 35. Any questions on the chat?
no,
Okay, cool. Right? It says here on page 35, it says that slaves began to reason that their success might depend upon their ability to make friends among neighboring Indians, because friends do not hunt friends. It was wise for these Native Americans and these Negro slaves to join forces with each other. We knew that there was safety amongst each other. We knew that we would protect one another, because as this white man so clearly put, friends do not hunt friends. And we were more than just friends. Native Americans, Negro slaves, we were brothers. We are sisters. We are families. And families are not supposed to hunt each other down. Friends are not supposed to hunt each other down. And we knew that back then. We knew that Native Americans suffered slavery under the white man. The so-called Negroes suffered slavery under the white man. And both of us knew that friends don't hunt friends. Both of us knew of the atrocities we were under during our enslavement under white people. And friends don't hunt friends. Let's go to page 36. It says here, the spirit of rebellion spread like a wildfire that no European power could put out. In the next 10 years, revolt spread to Colombia, Panama, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. In 1537, a major insurrection threatened Spanish headquarters at Mexico City. Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza reported that Africans, Negroes, had chosen a king and had agreed to kill all the Spaniards, and that the Indians were also with them. The Negroes and the Indians all agreed to kill the Spaniards. They were all in unison. They were all in one accord, both the Negro and the Indians, together fighting against the oppressor, together rescuing each other, together freeing each other from the harsh slavery that they were under the French and the Spanish and the Italian and the English and the Portuguese, the white slave masters. Terrified Mexican officials agreed to halt any further importations of Africans, of Negroes. Slave resistance had temporarily halted the African slave trade. And due to our union, due to us fighting together, dying together, we put a stop for a time of the African slave trade. We stopped the white man from importing and enslaving more Negroes and bringing them to the Americas, because natives and Negroes fought side by side. We came to the need and aid of each other. We rescued one another. We fought to free each other. Right? And then it says the Europeans tested their strongest efforts to keep Africans, the Negroes, apart from Native Americans. They did everything in their power to sever our brotherhood, to keep us from being one. Let's keep going. Let's go to page 55. Okay, here we go. It says, the Seminole Nation offered their new friends some valuable gifts in return. Africans, the Negroes, and other ethnic groups enjoyed an independent village status. So the Seminole Indians lived with the Negroes, with freed Negro slaves, and they gave them independent village status. Their only obligation was to pay a small agricultural tax to be used for the common defense. And the only thing that they had to do was to pay a small tax, a small food tax. That way they can help with defending our village, defending their home, defending their land. If Africans, the Negroes, needed something besides freedom, it was a strong defense against slave hunters from the north. So their tax was well spent. Because these freed slaves, these runaways, they needed something more than just freedom. They needed a way to keep their freedom. And that was being able to defend themselves. And the Native Americans offered them that very same defense they very well needed. It says, Georgia slaveholders, white men from Georgia who were slave masters, were soon invading Florida, seeking their runaways, and were soon meeting a united resistance. These slave owners, these white slave owners that were looking and hunting down their runaway slaves, met face to face with a united resistance by red and black armed forces. Native Americans and Negroes joined forces to fight against slave hunters, to fight against slave masters looking to take their slaves back. It says here, while hostile British forces closes in on its Florida border as early as 1587, Spain recruited anyone willing to fight these invaders. Florida became a Spanish buffer zone, protected by Native American and African Negro warriors. Native Americans and Negro warriors fought in Florida against the British invaders. And Spain took advantage of this because Spain was also at war with Britain over the south of North America. It says in 1739, slave fugitives living in St. Augustine built a fort to protect their families and stem British incursions. So slaves decided to build a fort to protect their families and their loved ones and to fight back against British invaders, right? The English were furious about a fort guarded by hundreds of armed Africans and their Indian allies. White people were furious that Negroes and Native Americans were joined forces, fighting back. Just like we joined forces and loved each other and fought to save and rescue one another in the Bible. Let's keep going to page 56. It says, British and then U.S. slaveholders were horrified by strong relationships among red and black Seminoles. Each owed the other a measure of devotion and service, and this was hardly what whites had come to expect. These Seminole Indians, both red and black, were devoted to one another. They loved each other. They were in service to each other. They fought for one another and fought with one another against our enemies. Black Seminoles had well-built homes and raised fine crops of corn, sweet potatoes, vegetables, and cotton. They were known for their excellent fighting skills. A major in the Georgia militia called them, the Seminoles, the best soldiers. We were the best soldiers. We were the best warriors, especially when we fought side by side of each other. It says that Georgia slaveholders soon understood that black Seminole camps could put an end to their slave system. There was nothing stopping us once we became united. There was nothing stopping us when Native Americans and Negroes joined forces, realized that we were brothers and sisters, and fought against our oppressors, the white race, our white slave masters and slaveholders, the white invaders of the Americas, right? Let's go on to page 62. It says, from the beginning of its interest in Florida, the United States was astounded and infuriated by the easy mixture of the races in the Seminole Nation. It constantly sought to divide the two peoples. General Gaines of the United States told the Seminole king Hitachi, you harbor a great many of my black people among you at the Suwannee, and asked the king to go by you against them. He wanted the king to go against the dark people that lived among him. General Gaines even promised that I will not hurt anything belonging to you. General Gaines wanted this Seminole king to allow white people to go and capture black Seminoles, black slaves, black runaways, people who looked black, and promised that he wouldn't hurt anything that belonged to this Seminole king. Let's see what the Seminole king, King Hitachi, said. King Hitachi was also definite. I harbor no Negroes. I shall use force to stop any armed Americans from passing my towns or my lands. This king was not going to allow any white man to come into his towns or to his lands to try to capture any one of his people. Like he said, he holds no Negroes. Everyone was family. Everyone was Seminole. Everyone was brothers and sisters, no matter what a color their skin complexion was. I shall use force to stop any armed Americans. He was willing to die for his people. He was willing to die for Native Americans and for Negroes, because to him they were all the same race. To him they were all the same color. To him they were all the same people. And just like in the Bible, we fought for one another. We loved one another. We went to war for one another. And this Seminole king is a great example of how he defended his people. There was no distinction between natives, between the indigenous and the slaves that were brought over by white people. They were all one. Let's see. We're going to go to page 66. General Jessup first tried to destroy this alliance by assaulting black Seminole villages and holding women and children hostage. In 2 months, his troops seized 131 blacks, mostly women and children. When his men stormed Osceola's headquarters, Osceola was a leader of one of the Seminole nations. The chief's personal bodyguard was captured. So his personal bodyguard, Osceola's personal bodyguard, there were 55 men that were his personal bodyguard. It says 52 of these men were black. Osceola escaped, but illness would end his life in a year. By 1837, Osceola had become the leader of black and red resistance to U.S. slaveholders. He was the leader of so-called Negroes and so-called Native Americans fighting back against white slave owners, against white people. Those who rode with him, such as Wildcat, were prepared to defend their black brothers and sisters to the death. I'm going to read this again. Those who rode with Osceola were prepared to defend their black brothers and sisters to death. General Jessup believed that Seminole warriors have fought as long as they had life through the influence of the leading Negroes. So so-called Negroes were helping lead this rebellion. And the Seminole Indians, the Seminole warriors who fought side by side with their so-called Negro brothers, they will fight as long as there was life in them. They fought as long as they were being led by their brothers. It says, under their own leaders, Negro Abraham and John Horse, also known as Coia, and in consort with Chief Osceola and Wildcat, they pursued their own strategies. They developed their own strategies together, both black and red Seminole Indians, to fight against the so-called white invaders. Their strategy was to wear down U.S. armed forces until compromise was possible, right? They ended up signing a treaty granting that the Seminoles keep their Negroes and bona fide property and shall accompany them to the West. So in order for so-called white people to leave the Native Americans alone, they had to use the language and terms that white people understood and say that their black brothers belong to them, were their property, in order for them to leave them alone, right? We're going to skip this. General Jessup wrote, he now saw that the two races are identified in interest and feelings and could not be separated. So he knew that there was nothing he can do to separate them. They were all united. They all saw each other as one. Right? Now we're going to skip to page 70. It says, in the final months of his Florida effort, General Jessup resorted to a full-scale deception and hostage seizures. And by the fall of 1837, he had captured King Philip and his black Seminole son, John Philip. This brought forth King Philip's key son, Wildcat, to negotiate. Right? Now, if you can see this image right here, this is a so-called red Seminole, Wildcat, the son of King Philip. It says, Wildcat, riding a spirited horse, bearing a white crane's plum in his silver headband as a sign of peace, and accompanied by 4 chiefs, Wildcat arrived to bargain for his father's and brother's release. Now remember, Wildcat's father, King Philip, was captured right along with so-called Black Seminoles, Black Seminole Indians. And Wildcat arrived to bargain for his father's and his brother's release. These so-called Black Seminoles were Wildcat's brothers. It says for a moment, General Jessup wanted to seize him for his part in the recent hostage rescue success. Instead, he decided to use him to organize a final peace conference. Wildcat was sent forth bearing a white flag and asked to return with leading Seminoles. His mission changed abruptly when he met his friend John Horse. This right here is a so-called Negro named John Horse, a Black Seminole leader. Now we have a prince, King Philip's son, a native Seminole Indian, Wildcat, in this picture, met his good friend, John Horse, a Black Seminole leader. Wildcat's mission changed abruptly. It drastically changed. The original plan went out the window when he met his friend John Horse. This so-called red Seminole Indian and this so-called Black Seminole Indian were good friends, best of friends. Both men were 25, skilled warriors and shrewd negotiators. They were like the mirror of each other, both Wildcat and John Horse. Their friendship will last for 20 years, and it revolved around their agreement that red and Black Seminoles were blood sisters and blood brothers whom no foe could part. No one could stand between Black and red Seminole Indians. They were blood brothers. They were blood sisters. And Wildcat and John Horse, two of my most favorite brothers that I've read in this book, that I've come across, that I've learned about. 2 of my favorite brothers knew that they were brothers. They fought for one another. They would die for one another. Right? Both had a tendency to drink too much. Sounds like Hispanic and Native Americans, right?
Right.
Let's see where else. It says, General Hernandez suddenly ordered the chiefs to deliver all the Negroes taken from U.S. citizens at once. He made no mention of releasing King Philip, Wildcat's father. As Seminoles stood shocked, Hernandez signaled, and 200 U.S. 2nd Dragoons came out of the forest, hiding, carbines aimed at Seminole hearts. The prisoners were marched to the old jail at Fort Marion and thrust into a cell 33 by 18 feet to await deportation to Arkansas. Osceola, probably ill with the fever that would soon take his life, slumped in a corner. So Chief Osceola is sick and dying. Wildcat, John Horse at his side, took command of plans for a breakout. So here again, we're reading about Wildcat and John Horse, both red and black Seminoles, side by side. It says Wildcat, John Horse at his side. They were together. Took command of plans for a breakout. While General Jessup and Hernandez congratulated themselves on a masterful truce violation, because white people are always violating the truce that they make with the natives. Seminole leaders, their prisoners, were tearing at a rusted bar, blocking a hole atop their 18-foot high cell. So while these white commanders and generals were celebrating, we were putting a plan into action to escape. Wildcat later wrote, "We resolved to make our escape or die in the attempt." Wildcat was willing to die to free himself and his brothers. It was weeks before Wildcat and John Horse and the others weakened the huge iron bar that blocked the hole. When a delegation of Cherokees came in to convince the Seminoles to surrender, Osceola weakly waved no. Finally, the bar was loosened, and one night, 20 Seminoles, including 2 women, were led to freedom by Wildcat and John Horse. Red and black Seminoles together. Just like blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in the Bible fought together, rescued each other together, sought freedom and safety together. Right? And listen, I would definitely suggest you all to get this book, Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage, because this devil, this white man, has a lot of information on how much love so-called Native Americans and so-called Negroes have for one another. How we rescued and fought for each other. And I was amazed when I read about John Horse and Wildcat, because these 2 brothers loved each other. Remember, the Native Americans are the Gadites. The Seminole Indians were the Reubenites. And like we read in Joshua chapter 1, they were commanded by Moses to go help their brothers get freedom, land, safety for their children and for their wives. And to me, in my opinion, something was in their spirit to keep that commandment that Moses gave them way back in ancient times, to free their Negro brothers, to make sure that they could escape to safety, to rescue them, to welcome them into their land, to help them secure their own land for their little ones, their children and their wives, to help their Negro brothers build their own towns and villages. And with that, I'm Priest and Officer Shagapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General YAHANNA. And we will continue to teach that the so-called blacks, so-called Native Americans, so-called Hispanics, we are one blood. We are brothers and sisters. We can prove it. We fight together and we die together. And it is in our nature to come to each other's aid. So if you are Black, Hispanic, or Native American, and you're watching this class, just know that we are brothers and sisters. And we can and we will continue to come to each other's aid. And with that, I pass the class over to Precinct Officer YONKERS. You can end the class, right, brother?